All right, welcome back. Another episode of Dropkick Basement, your favorite pro wrestling history podcast. I am Mike Madden, and joining me on the other end, Tommy Schultz. Tom, we're back for another episode. How you be?
I'm doing good. We're coming out of the busiest season of the wrestling year.
That's true.
And we're gonna get into some guys who may not have been on that big show.
Yeah, we are recording this just before WrestleMania, but we don't want any spoilers from anyone. So if anybody knows the booking plans, please don't over the next session. Don't DM us and let us know. But we hope everybody enjoyed Mania. We talked a lot about that Hall of Fame.
Yes.
And I hope the Hall of Fame ceremony goes well. I think it's starting at like 1 o'clock in the morning, our local time that night on Peacock Network.
Lovely.
So strap in. Vegas, you get your share of that. So, yes, our topic, this was one of your topics that you brought to the table.
Yes.
We are talking the Mount Rushmore of wrestlers who never went to the WWF or WWE. And this is always kind of like something that people think about, talking about, and they're usually like stuck in the, well, everybody went there eventually, or, the guys that didn't go were so far in the past that, they're not worth talking about. But we have scrounged our own lists of guys who never appeared, and we're going to talk about it. And we're going to, debate back and forth and have a good time with it. So if you feel confident, I would like to hear your Mount Rushmore first.
I do feel confident, and I kind of want to lay like the ground rules that we kind of set going into it, which was like you had to have as a rule, you had to have some sort of at least major run within the United States. And like so essentially we're disqualifying guys who had strictly runs in Japan or Mexico. Or Puerto Rico.
Yep.
And also when it comes to people who were technically signed by WWE
Yes.
in the old developmental territories, I kind of said, let's if it's in like the NXT era, obviously we're not going to count them.
Right. Yeah.
But in the old, like when we're talking about like Heartland or Deep South or something, those, even if you may have been under a technical contract, but you never appeared on WWE television in any sense of the word.
Right.
So
right.
I would consider those people not WWE guys.
Yeah, and I think you could even stretch it back if you wanted to, back to OVW, although I think a lot of those guys, when OVW was developmental, they made at least some appearance, in WWE. So a lot of them were, or they had returned from being there in the past, and they were coming back through OVW.
So it was mainly like, I would say like the NXT era of developmental is where we're starting the disqualification.
That's right. Okay.
Of that.
That makes a lot of sense.
Everybody else is fair game. And
Stupendous.
so I know that you and I are going to have different lists because I have
an old man brain.
Well, not only that, but like I have I don't know. I have an affinity for the independent scene.
Of course. Yeah.
Especially as of now, and so I think you already know. I'm going to go from number 4 to number 1. I'm going to lead up. And so my number 4 pick, I think you could probably predict it. It's a guy that I've been talking about a lot lately because he recently retired.
Yep.
And that would be the notorious 187 Homicide.
Okay. All right.
I would say on the Mount Rushmore of independent wrestling, without a doubt.
He made when we did the episode with Matt of the Mount Rushmore of underrated wrestlers, I believe he was in the discussion. I know that. I don't know if he made the final Mount Rushmore, but
I don't think so. But
think he was. I think he was one that you did talk about, and justifiably so.
especially growing up in the Northeast. I mean, whether it be Jersey All Pro Wrestling, Combat Zone Wrestling, going to TNA,
Ring of Honor.
eventually Ring of Honor,
Yeah.
like Ring of Honor world champion multiple times.
Yeah.
Classic feuds with Steve Corino, Colt Cabana. Just, I would say, a staple of the Northeast independent scene. And it kind of boggles my mind that at some, I know that, and I will say the one knock on Homicide is he is not good on the mic. But you could put him.
You could have been with a manager. He could.
You could put him with a manager. You could put him even in a tag. Like he was in the tag with what's his name, Hernandez.
Yep.
And Hernandez wasn't much of a talker either. But they eventually paired them with Conan, didn't they?
They were with Conan. They were with yeah. They had the LAX faction. I think Hector Guerrero was part of it too. So you had other people doing like the promo work. But
you put a mouthpiece, or you put a big guy with him, and he's like the little shit talker. Like you could have had him. So he could have been like the Enzo Amore in a NXT faction, but he could actually work.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, and very good. His feuds with Teddy Hart on the independent scene were like legendary. Say what you will about Teddy Hart, he's a piece of shit. But fucking Homicide to me is like a guy that I just can't believe never got a chance.
He's very interesting, and he was very I think I don't want to say it was a knock on him, but I think a lot of probably the reason why he didn't get to go there was his size more than anything else.
But at this point, there are so many guys.
Listen, if he was 20 years younger, he'd get the look and he'd be there. Like he would be a guy on their show, and he would make a lot of sense. It was just, again, he was just a little early for his style.
Yeah,
despite
I think
the fact that
might have been ahead of his time.
Despite the fact that he was, a big star on the independents and a draw and a go-to guy when it came to like if you needed a heel in a program to do again dastardly shit, like he was your go-to. Like he could grapple, he could fly, he can certainly brawl. So you're right. Like we talked about him on the underrated for that specific reason, was that he was so versatile, and the fact that he never got a chance to go up there that's fascinating to me. So that's a very good kickoff.
Yeah, and he's just like a personal favorite of mine too.
Yeah.
So it's like,
yeah.
All right, so number 3, we're gonna have this is gonna be a double-headed head on Mount Rushmore.
All right.
We're going to have a dual head of a tag team. You could even maybe put a third head in there.
Mm-hmm.
The Midnight Express.
Really? Okay. All right. I like that. You can put a third head in, but you can't. And I'll tell you why.
I know why you're going to say you can't.
Stan was there as a commentator.
He was there as a commentator, but Bobby was also a trainer for them. He was on the payroll.
I don't count. Didn't appear on TV.
I don't count that either.
Yeah.
But Stan Lane never actually wrestled. He was a commentator.
True. Right.
So if you're, and also not as part of the entity
of the Midnight Express. Yeah.
That is the Midnight Express. Harking back to our last episode, travesty that they're not in the Hall of Fame.
I know. Yeah.
One of the best tag teams of all time.
It's my favorite tag team of all time. Yeah.
And if just by himself, I could have put Bobby Eaton on this list, because Bobby Eaton is, when you're talking about underrated, Bobby Eaton is maybe the most underrated wrestler of all time.
Yeah. Yeah. He gets himself graduated from the underrated because he was so good as a tag team wrestler.
Yeah.
And they were a main event everywhere they went for a good like 3 or 4 year stretch. And when I say main event, they're going on last at major shows in Mid-South, in Texas, in Crockett Promotions. So yeah, I mean,
I've heard stories that when Crockett was running A and B shows, the Midnight and Rock and Roll were headlining one show, Flair and somebody else would be headlining another show.
Yeah.
And Midnight and Rock and Roll are outdrawing them.
Right. Depending on where it was, you were going to get a better crowd for Ricky and Robert against Bobby and Dennis. And Dennis Condrey is another guy, just to step in here. Dennis Condrey, as good as Bobby Eaton was as a tag team guy, Dennis and even Stan belong in that category because they were both like, when they were separated, they were always the best when they were together, right? So Eaton, Condrey, Eaton, Lane, they were great. But if you took Dennis Condrey and you had him in when he was in Memphis and he teamed with Phil Hickerson, he was great. When he teamed with, he was a teammate of Dr. D. David Schultz at one point, and they were a really great like working Memphis team.
My grandpa.
And and Stan Lane was with Steve Kern in the Fabulous Ones. So yeah, I mean, Midnight Express. You're never going to get an argument from me about accolades for the Midnight Express. Definitely a great one.
Okay, so number 2 is the most contemporary. Homicide just retired, but Homicide's been wrestling for 30 plus years. So
okay,
he put in his time, which that makes it even crazier that he never even got a sniff.
Yeah.
Number 2, I would argue, is the best wrestler of the last decade, and that's Kenny Omega. You can't make this list without Kenny Omega on it.
Definitely, and Kenny was in the developmental.
He was in the developmental for a short period of time.
Yeah,
like less than a year, and
he hated it. Yeah.
Hated it. Requested. He was in Deep South, which was like not even the A tier developmental system at that time, and he requested to be released.
Because he said he's like, I'm not good enough to be here.
Yeah, and also he hated Bill DeMott, who everyone hates Bill DeMott.
Yeah. But he's got a great story though about when he was in Deep South and that was or maybe it was at Harley's camp because he trained under Harley for a little while and Harley pulled a gun on him. But he also tells a story about Laurinaitis coming in and Laurinaitis because they were going to. Because Harley had a connection with Pro Wrestling Noah, and they were like, "Hey, we're gonna like scout guys, and you get to go to Pro Wrestling Noah if you show us what you can do." And he was like, "That I wanted to do that more than I wanted to make the main roster was go wrestle in Japan." So that that goes to show that Kenny had his head in the stars when it came to that, and he probably wouldn't have fit.
No.
In
his style would never
2009 or 2008 whenever he was in developmental. So
I mean, if you want to talk about ahead of his time, Kenny Omega invented the indie style in 2008.
Yeah.
That we're seeing today.
Yeah.
Kenny Omega invented the New Japan style that everyone in AEW is now using.
That's today. The AEW main event style. Yeah.
Kenny is not only one of the best modern wrestlers, but one of the best ever.
All time. Yeah.
And
yeah, he's great.
You're always going to get the detractors that say he couldn't make the big time. But that's of his own volition. It's
Yeah,
not. It's
of
not
course.
something that he couldn't do. You think that if his contract came up nowadays, they wouldn't sign him in a second and
Oh,
give him a
yeah.
multi-million-dollar contract.
And tell him he can headline
Do it. Yeah,
the first night of a 2-for-1 pay-per-view.
yeah. But he is genuinely, he has put on some of the most unbelievable performances I've ever seen.
Yeah. Yeah.
A guy that went to Japan, wrestled an 8-year-old girl,
Right.
and made it entertaining.
Yeah. Yeah.
A guy that, and then came to the United States and headlined every indie show until he became the face of New Japan, and then helped create the competitor
Yeah.
to WWE. Now he's one of the best of all time.
Yeah. Trailblazer.
Trailblazer,
Love it.
Innovator. Can't say enough about Kenny Omega.
All right.
And then my number one, it is an international wrestler, but made his mark in the United States, and it's arguably the best Japanese wrestler of all time, and that's the Great Muta.
Great Muta. Yeah.
Uh,
He's
the fact that he never even came close to wrestling in the WWE is insane.
right.
To me.
You shake your head that nobody was like, and I think a lot of it had to do with working agreements and his loyalty, that he always knew he was going to go back to New Japan and wrestle for them. He came up in their dojo. He was one of the Three Musketeers. He goes on excursion, and what's weird about, like, think about the places that he touched down in before he even went to the NWA and WCW. He's in Florida.
Yep.
As the White Ninja, although he was all dressed in black. He was the Black Ninja in Texas for a very small period of time, then made his way over to Crockett at the very end of Crockett. Like Crockett they had sold it to Turner, so it's a transition. And he's with Gary Hart, the incredible Gary Hart, and he had that push of a lifetime. Oh, fucking great, that push of a lifetime. But yeah, I mean, an endearing character. He could have fit into WWF
Easily.
a million different ways. Like, imagine, just fantasize about the Great Muta and his angel body dropping into 1995 or 1996 WWF.
Instead of Hakushi.
Alongside Hakushi. I don't care. Like, make them a team and then split them apart. Yeah.
If you, I would say that the Muta is more apt to the WWF style or the WWF look. I mean, you just picture the Hasbro action figure of the Great Muta.
With the big dragon. Yeah.
With the big dragon.
Yeah.
That comes off. I mean, like, he could have been like the Rey Mysterio before Rey Mysterio.
True. Yeah.
When it comes to merchandise sellers.
Yeah.
Because you could sell the face paint as a mask.
Yeah. Sell a face paint kit. Fuck that.
I mean, dude, there's so much they could have done with him. And not only that, unbelievably great in the ring.
Yeah.
So good. And the craziest part is that when he's having his retirement match, WWE sends Nakamura over there to wrestle him.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Because they're like, the mood is, but they never thought to bring him over.
Yeah.
It's even in like they wound up bringing Liger over eventually to like do an NXT
show. Yeah.
Like to not do that with Muta.
Do a one-time thing.
Muta and Nakamura on like a takeover. It's crazy.
I think the knees was an issue, and I think his,
of course, yeah. I mean, like
physical,
but you could have worked around it.
Of course, yeah. Wow.
Just even to make an appearance or something, like just do something. Yeah. Or like when they bought out WCW, he was still making semi-regular appearances with them.
True.
He, like up until 2001, Like, you could have worked out
Yeah.
a deal to have him come in and do a match.
Yeah, no, he's it's an easy layup, and they couldn't make it happen for
And
one
the
reason
fact
or another.
that he never got Kenny and the Midnight Express, they had like some
There was some interest.
ties,
Yeah, of course.
and interest.
Yeah, yeah.
But the fact that that Muda, I mean, one of the biggest draws in Japanese history,
Yeah.
never even got a look
Yeah.
when some other guys did.
Yeah. They kept getting look over and over again. Jeez, how many times you bring back Jimmy Wang Yang? But it's
Yoshitatsu.
yeah, seriously. Yeah. God damn it. That's a good list. All right, so that's a good Rushmore. I will tell you that the Great Muta was on my Rushmore.
Okay.
Beautiful Bobby Eaton by himself was on my Rushmore.
Okay.
Those are my 1 and 2. I feel
Okay.
very strongly about Bobby Eaton being one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, and he would have been awesome in WWF because he was a flyer. He could brawl, got physical, couldn't talk to fucking save his life.
No.
But goddamn, Bobby Eaton was fucking great. Bobby Eaton's one of the best. And we already talked enough about Muta, so I'm gonna give you my 3 and my 4.
So who was your 1?
My 1 of 1 is Bobby Eaton.
Okay.
He's the
And
first
Muda was
face,
2.
and Muta's my 2. Yeah.
Okay.
My 3 is the Young Bucks. So I've got a tag team on there.
They were on my honorable mentions.
And they're a great example of two guys who were like, they had their time. I guess they had their time doing like tryout matches, and they, of course, they did like a couple of like, extra work. Everybody does extra work. I'm not counting that as
No,
being,
of course
because you
not.
weren't contracted. But when they did get contracts before they started AEW, they started with TNA, and they had such a miserable experience after the first 3 months of being there and having a great time, and it really broke down on them that they were like, well, we're going to make a name for ourselves on the indies, and we're going to do Ring of Honor. We're going to make that a priority. We're going to go to Japan. We're going to make ourselves big in Japan. And they basically, they were a do-it-yourself entity for a long time. And when NXT like blew everybody's minds in 2014 and 2015, like there's a layup to like say, all right, Bucks, whatever deal you've got with Ring of Honor or New Japan, we'll wait until that expires, but get ready to sign the contracts because you're coming and you're going to be in NXT for 6 months, and you'll be the SmackDown Tag Team Champions and probably get buried the second that Vince catches eyes on you. But I think they were smart. I think they've been smart about protecting their characters and protecting their brand and not giving that over to be either all right, now we, all this merchandise we can sell on our own and all this cool gear and all this like really like leaps and bounds over what anybody else was doing with merchandise and wrestling. They would have had to give all that up to probably have their name changed to something fucking stupid when they went to developmental.
Just like they did in
Jeremy and Max Buck or whatever they were called in TNA. So the idea of them being smart and being savvy enough to say, no, we're going to stick it out, and then we're going to create the biggest independent show in the last 30 years of pro wrestling, and then sky's the limit. We can start our own company, and we're going to stick with it and not be swayed. All the credit in the world goes to Bucks. So the Bucks are on my Mount Rushmore of people who never went to the WWE.
I would agree with that.
And my other one, now this is a guy who had a chance to go in 85 or 86. I think it was 85. And there were a lot of rumors that he was going to be the opponent for Hogan at WrestleMania 2. But it never came to fruition. He stuck around in the NWA and had a good run, turned babyface in late 86, early 87. Stopped wrestling for a little while. I'm talking Nikita Koloff.
Yep.
is on my Mount Rushmore of guys who never went. Because if he had gone, one of two things would have happened. He would have had a program with Hogan, and they really would have done the America versus Russia thing. Instead of Bundy, it would have been Hogan and Nikita in the cage.
Would have been much better.
And Hogan and Nikita in the cage probably would have been better. Yeah, because, Bundy
sucks.
I love Bundy as a character. Bundy was fucking tough to move in the ring. And he was a good Hogan opponent to a certain extent, but that WrestleMania match was just dull. And a blue cage is never a good look. So Nikita would have been more interesting. Now, what I'm saying, though, is it probably would have been short-lived. Because you're not going to put the title on Nikita at a WrestleMania. You're not going to put the title on Nikita at all. Could he have been your Intercontinental Champion or a Tag Team Champion? Probably. Like that's probably a good spot for him. But he had just come out of like that breakout as a Tag Team Champion in Crockett with Uncle Ivan, and he had his chance to be the United States Champion, or the USA Champion as he kept calling it. And he broke out in that series with Magnum TA in the summer of '86, then eventually turned babyface and teamed with Dusty, and was a key guy. Like he was a television champion and challenged for the tag team titles a bunch. And then when he came back, like he had a feud with Sting. Like so, he was always a really good upper card guy, main event level guy for WCW in the early '90s. Probably could have had a good run in WWF, I think, or it would have turned into this is Nikolai's new partner, and then you're lugging fucking Big Nick around, and you're the workhorse in a tag team with Nikolai, or you're teaming up with the Iron Sheik, or you're doing six mans and they're like a foreign guy faction. So it might not have been great, but I still think like character wise, like as this. Almost like a Russian cyborg is how he was presented in Jim Crockett. Would have been perfect for WWF. They would have made millions of dollars with him.
100%. Yeah, like it would have been a short-lived run for sure, because that was kind of the mold. It was
feed Hogan
somebody, and it could go 6 months, and then once you lose to Hogan, it's kind of tough to come out of it.
Yeah. Or again, you rebuild yourself in the undercard.
Unless you go through the undercard.
Yeah.
But he was on the he was on my honorable mentions for sure.
So that's my four. I've got Bobby Eaton, beautiful Bobby. I've got Muda. I've got the Bucks, and I've got Nikita Koloff in the 1 through 4 spot there. Let's talk a little bit about the honorable mentions while we're on the topic. You said Nikita was on your, and the Bucks were on your honorable mentions.
Both on my honorable mentions. I mean, there's a ton. There's like you can go through the independent scene, and most of them have come and gone.
Yeah.
In the WWE, there were two that I thought kind of were innovators in their own right in the early 2000s that never got their chance. One being the Amazing Red. I thought that like Red, he had that huge breakout in TNA, and I think that like injuries kind of hampered him.
Yeah.
Because he was, again, like a guy like Homicide on the Northeast, he was so electric on the
absolutely
indie speed.
Yeah.
And then once TNA hit that X division, Red was the face of the X division.
He was perfect
when it started.
Don West's favorite wrestler,
but even before like AJ and all of them, like Red was the guy, and he got hurt, and then he just never kind of like came back from it.
He would have been great if when they brought in Rey Mysterio.
When they did the Cruiserweight, like the Cruiserweight Open kind of deal.
Oh, you're thinking like in 2016.
Like
okay.
No, like the Cruiserweight when they did the Cruiserweight Open at WrestleMania 20, like he would have been
okay, sure.
like a good like surprise
Yeah.
like guy
Yeah.
to bring in.
But I think he would have fit in that, like in that particular time frame. You're talking like 2003 to like
2003, 2004.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when they were showing it on SmackDown, it was part of
And,
the
like,
program on SmackDown, and you had guys like
when they were bringing in Ultimo Dragon
right.
and Juventud and
Yeah.
Psychosis and stuff like that,
Yeah.
he would have been a great guy to slide in.
a great underdog. And again, he's a guy that gets a lot of recognition now, because I think it's obvious that there's a lot of people in both major companies and all over the indies that are like, I learned a lot of the moves, or I stole a lot of the moves from, it's a variation on Red, and people are talking about it, and it's like, yeah, like he stopped swallowing.
Code Red is
Stop swallowing people's name like that. Just
Yeah.
say, I learned this from him, or I learned this from Petey Williams, because I know he's a producer over there. But like, just say their name. Fucking,
the code.
you're
the
allowed
code
to do
Red,
it now.
the Code Red is essentially the Canadian Destroyer, and everyone credits Petey Williams with the
Yeah.
Canadian Destroyer, but the Code Red, Amazing Red started doing that in 2000.
Yeah,
So like,
it's a shorter drop. That's really the only.
Yeah, it's like instead of a pile driver, he
Yeah.
hooks you with like the sunset flip. But
Right.
it's essentially the same thing.
Yeah.
But like he innovated that move. The Code Red. He was doing the Star Twister press. He was like he was way ahead of his time. And again, it's a guy that because of his size, probably never got the look, because even for small guys, he's small,
And he's not a promo. He's not a.
he can't cut a promo.
He's
He's
not
not
really
a
a
body
character. Yeah, that's.
Yeah.
If
It's just a guy that can do cool shit.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of guys that are like that now, that are getting their looks.
Yeah,
And it's just, he's like Homicide, a guy that's ahead of his time.
True. All right. He's a good one to throw in there.
Kicking it back, there were two like older. Nick Bockwinkel is a name that we brought up last episode.
Yes.
In the Hall of Fame episode, Nick Bockwinkel, I don't think ever had a run in WWF.
So he didn't, but I do think, and again, as a traveling champion, and when they had agreements with some, there might have been some crossover. Bockwinkel did appear on television in WWF though, because he was brought in as a road agent in '87, and he was a commentator. So he did color commentary at Madison Square Garden a couple times with it was him, Heenan, and Monsoon, and it was basically like Bockwinkel and Heenan just like clowning on Gorilla the whole time. It's pretty entertaining shit. And I think he did some stuff with who's the other guy that they had like a lead announcer over there, like Craig DeGeorge or Sean Mooney, somebody like that. Like I think he did like a couple Coliseum home videos. Then got fired and released as a road agent. But he did also. I have seen him wrestle in person. He's part of that legendary Legends Battle Royal that I talk about.
Oh, okay.
So he did have his technically he had his match in WWF in '87 at the Meadowlands in the Legends Battle Royal. It's available on YouTube. I will talk about that in a future episode. But no, I think in addition to that, I think Bockwinkel did have a maybe some crossover. Maybe wrestle Bob. I'd have to look that up and see if that was actually the case or if I'm misremembering it. But no, he's worth mentioning, and like he probably would have been a great guy in the 70s and early 80s to come in and challenge Bob for the title, and maybe like an Intercontinental title run would have been sweet for him. But I think he just the idea of like he was a trusted Vern. He was a Vern guy, so Vern wasn't gonna screw the pooch on that. And he also had a great relationship with Paul Bosch in Houston, where they weren't working with WWF. They were working with, if they were crossing over with anybody, it was maybe the NWA a little bit. But yeah, no, Bockwinkel's tremendous. I still recommend Bockwinkel shit. But it's good that he's on your list. It's a good
And
name.
I had two more honorable mentions.
Mm-hmm.
One, Magnum TA,
Yeah.
and I think that's mainly due to his career being cut short because
Mm-hmm.
I feel like eventually he would have
He would have
gotten
made
there.
it there. Well, that's the other thing. He was a Dusty guy.
Yeah, but I even Dusty
Even
left.
Dusty left.
Yeah, so
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I think
Magnum's
that
interesting.
eventually he probably would have went had it not been that his career got cut short. But
Yeah. He would have been fun.
and again, he's another guy where it's like he had such a it was like it was a short run really. It wasn't a
Yeah.
long thing, but he was at he had a very high ceiling,
Mm-hmm.
and he was eventually gonna be the guy there.
Yeah. Yeah.
It unfortunately because of his
Yeah. The
accident,
auto accident. Yeah.
he never got there.
Yeah.
And the final one, this is another contemporary pick, and unfortunately we'll never get to see this. But it's I think the best independent tag team of all time, and that's the Briscoes.
The Briscoes. God, the Briscoes should have been there. Whether they
Had it-
fucked it up or, and I think the
Had it not been for whatever stupid tweet Jay sent out, like
well, technically that
Years ago.
wasn't it. Technically, they did have tryouts, and they just were called cosmetically unpleasing, which is basically
but I think had that not happened,
Yeah.
they would have eventually gotten it in NXT.
they would have had the NXT,
They-
just like
they
the
would've-
Bucks. They would have had the
They,
NXT
they
run.
would have brought them into NXT,
Yeah.
and even the Briscoes never gotten a proper AEW run either.
True.
For the same reason.
Yeah, yeah. Tony was trigger shy with them.
He from what I've heard, he was told by Warner executives that they weren't, and specific. Well, you saw the day after Jay died, Mark was on TV, so
Yeah, right.
that was
Yeah.
kind of.
Well, that's
And he's been there since, but
a shame. It's just
you know.
yeah, it's a shame because they were the best tag team of
They're
you
the
know,
best
the
independent
modern
tag
era.
team. The best in. I would put them over. I would put in. So it's hard. It's hard to say that the Young Bucks have had a bigger impact on wrestling than the Briscoes, but I think the Briscoes are
They're
a better tag team
Yeah.
than the Bucks.
Yeah.
I would say the Briscoes are a top 5 tag team of all time.
Yeah, you can make that argument, and I think there will be a lot of hands up saying, "Yep, I agree with that."
They were the. I didn't want to put 2 tag teams on my Mount Rushmore because I didn't want to have
A Mount
9
Six
heads.
more.
So they were interchangeable with Homicide at that 4 spot
Okay, all
for
right.
me.
Yeah.
They were like that next tier.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's an excellent set of honorable mentions. I'll run through. I actually had Kenny Omega in my honorable mentions. I had Maggie May, I call him, Magnum TA in the honorable mentions. A couple other guys that I thought of. Kevin Von Erich never had a run there.
Okay.
And I think he might have had one match at the Garden in the late 70s. I know Kerry did, and I know David had them. I think they had them separately. So I think David might have been the first one at the Garden in the late 70s, and I think Kerry had it in 80. And they were just one shots. I looked at cage match. I didn't see anything with Kevin. I think Kevin would have been like, if you're going to bring the Von Erichs in, and Vince wanted them. He wanted them in 83, and he made an overture to Fritz and said, like, I'll buy your territory. I want your sons in my company because I see a lot of potential in them. And Fritz stood his ground and said, no, these are my boys. This is my company. Go fuck yourself. You're not taking them. But they would have been a fun tag team in the WWF. I think whether it's whether it's all 3 of them, whether it was after Dave passed away and it was just Kevin and Kerry at any point. I think he did. He was on a rumored list in 1990 because they really wanted to keep. They love Kerry, but Kerry was a fuck up, and Kerry had a bad drug problem. And I think at one point they were like, "Well, World Class is dead. They got bought out by the USWA. Why don't we see if Kevin wants to sign and bring Kevin in?" And I think he was just like, "I'm done with wrestling, and I just want to sit at home."
That's a good impression.
Thank you. Gosh, I just my heart wasn't in it anymore. So Kevin basically was like, "Nope, not interested in the road." But he would have at any point. He probably would have been a good addition to the WWE roster, WWF roster, I should say. I'm going to blow your mind with this next one because you're never going to see this one coming. Honorable mention. Picture, you will, Scott Flash Norton in the WWF. Right? Let's bring him in.
That never happened.
Bring him in the 90s. It's when
but
when he goes to WCW, he should have gone to the WWF. He would have been
the only problem
great.
with that. The only problem with that,
yeah,
is he would have been Mantar.
He would have been Mantar, or they would have put him back in the lumberjack Scott Norton gimmick that he had in the AWA, and he would have been, or you would flapjack Scott Norton. That's what he would have been.
Yeah, he would have been like a moving guy. He would have owned a moving company.
He would have feuded with Dumpster Drosy or teamed with him. It's Flash Norton's moving company. Fuck Scott Norton.
He can move anything by himself.
He would have been Vince. I still don't understand.
Scott the Mover Norton. I see it right now.
I can't understand. Maybe it's because he was so loyal to New Japan that he never got a look over there. But Jesus Christ, Scott Norton would have been a wet dream for Vince.
Man, Scott Norton.
No
that's
neck.
A guy, just fucking break shit out.
Yeah, shit. I would have loved to see him over there. Alas,
just beating the shit out of Aldo Montoya.
Never came to fruition. Eddie Kingston's the only other guy that I wrote down.
That's my guy.
If Eddie Kingston was born,
that's my guy.
10 years ago, Eddie Kingston would have made it at some point, and he probably would have been a huge star because although he's like, he's unpredictable, but he's so believable in anything that he does and everything that he carries out. And again, he's the type of guy, he can make you love him or hate him, but you believe every step of the way. He's one of the best. And he will, like you're saying about Homicide, like he'll go down. People will talk about Eddie Kingston
like
long after he's
Homicide.
dead. Like they talk about Homicide, like they talk about Red. Like these are guys that, and I'm dying to see Eddie Kingston back on AEW TV, and I hope it's this summer.
I pray.
I miss my boy.
I pray to God that even if it's for a fucking day, they let him get one world title run.
Yeah.
If there is anyone in the world that deserves to be a world heavyweight champion, it's Eddie Kingston.
Damn it.
That guy has fucking done everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like when you go back right before he got signed to AEW, that was in the pandemic era of wrestling. He was quitting. He was literally selling his boots to pay his rent because he didn't have a way to make a living. Yeah. And he gets signed to AEW and fucking resurrects his career. Eddie Kingston, I will go down as saying my favorite professional wrestling feud of all time is Eddie Kingston versus Chris Hero. Their indie run from 2004 to 2008 is my favorite pro wrestling feud of all time. Yeah. That's a great one. And I think the only reason is like he, even on the independents, I don't think he got the due that he should have. And so maybe that's why I didn't look at him in that light, but you're 100% right.
I think a lot of people slept on him, and I think the idea of like I said, if he was 10 years younger,
100%. Yeah, oh yeah.
You could have said like, all right, well, we want to harness this energy that he has, and again, he's got a unique energy, where it's, and again, just a snap of a finger, you have the best heel in the business, and you have the most beloved babyface in the business, and his in-ring style does not change. He is like, he's a likable heel in that sense that, like, you know, he can go note for note on a promo with anybody, but you can also, again, he can brawl. He's got a love for Japanese wrestling. He's got there are some unique moves in his arsenal that you're like, how the fuck is this guy pulling off these exploder suplexes and even like when he gets dropped on his head, he looks like, Jesus Christ, this guy, like, you know, he fell so weird, and because he's got a different body, because he takes bumps so uniquely. And I think that's one thing that you're missing. This might sound like a tangent, but this is one thing that you're missing in pro wrestling these days, is that you don't have enough guys that take bumps uniquely. Where if you look at the guys from the 80s, the 70s especially, everybody took bumps differently. So like if I'm looking at somebody like selling a punch, there's a million ways to sell a punch. Nowadays, everybody sells a punch the same way. Yep. Eddie Kingston's a throwback in the sense that he sells a punch like he's getting into a bar fight. So he can get wobbly, or he could no sell it, and again, it's all on his whims, and it's all based on the character he's playing in that match. So therefore, it becomes like you gravitate towards it. You're fascinated by what he's doing.
And I think it's just because, like you and I, he loves pro wrestling.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he wants to pay homage to.
That's a big thing for him.
Everything that he loves.
Yeah.
about the business.
That's what's great about him. So that, yeah, I mean, although he doesn't make the Rushmore, he's in the conversation.
I would put him on there.
You're gonna add another.
You're gonna do a head.
This is a Matt Geiger Mount Rushmore. Five guy.
This is gonna be like a gargoyle. What do they call what? Hydra? What is that? Yes. Godzilla? Hydra. There's just gonna be 10 heads.
10 heads. We're redefining. This is. Suck it, Dave Meltzer. We're redefining. You can do your match systems, your match ratings a million different ways.
If you could give 19 stars to...
We're putting 5 faces on Rushmore.
There we go.
He's on the bottom of the mountain, but he's there. All right, good topic. Nice, nice little, trip down memory lane and talk about some guys that deserve to be talked about and gave us some good insight into... maybe a world where these guys made it to WWF, or WWE. And now I've given you something to think about, is that Scott Norton run, that imaginary Scott Norton run in 95-96 WWE. Right. Scott Norton versus Ahmed Johnson. Poor Scott Norton would be in the hospital after that, but sitting next to him in the hospital would probably be Ahmed Johnson. It's Rocky and Apollo Creed from the beginning of Rocky 2. There ain't gonna be a rematch.
Are they gonna put the Farouk headdress on Scott Norton?
Oh man, no, they can't do that.
Scott Assad?
Oh, yeah. Good callback. Don't forget the Farouks. He had a last name. It was Farouk Assad when he started. And then they were like, nope, that's stupid. All right. Let's get out of here. Let's bail out while we can. It's a good episode. Thanks again for listening. And we will see you guys at the matches.